Thanks for taking the time out of your obviously important work to talk to us.
Good morning.
Give me a sense of where things stand right now. How high is the river, and how much higher has it gone in the past few days?
The stage at St. Louis this morning is approximately 46.4 feet, and that's actually down a few inches from yesterday at this time. But the National Weather Service, which is the official forecasting agency of the government, is predicting another rise next week up to at least 47 feet.
Now, the Army Corps does what in terms of trying to control flooding along the river?
There's basically two major components of the federal flood control system, and one is the levee system along the river, and the other are the reservoirs, which are located at various points along the main stems of the river and also in the tributaries of the river.
All right, so give me a sense of what you would normally do in normal circumstances. You would take water coming out of the reservoirs and offload it at various times to keep them useful but not too high?
Correct. In an ideal situation, you store the water in the reservoirs and you don't release the water until the flood crest has passed certain key locations downstream.
And you build the levees high enough to take what kind of flooding usually?
Well, it depends on what type of levee, what the levees are protecting. A federal levee might provide protection up to a 100-year flood level, where some of the agricultural levees might be only a 10 or 15-year protection.
When did you guys realize you were in trouble?
Well, when you wake up every morning and see 6 to 7 inches of rain falling every night up in southern Iowa and northwest Missouri and places like around Peoria in Illinois, all that water's got to come by here eventually.
Was there a time early on that you took a look at the situation and realized that it was rapidly spinning out of control?
Well, as you know, this has been occurring. St. Louis has been above flood stage for almost 3 months. There was a few days when it wasn't above flood stage, and it's just a continuing situation. It's a flood of epic proportions.
Is there anything that you're actually doing right now or can do? Build the levees back up? But I mean, in terms of controlling the water level, you can't do anything, can you?
Well, Mike, as of right now, there's approximately 50 flood control reservoirs upstream of St. Louis, and they are holding back 8 million acre-feet of water as we speak right now. If that water would have been allowed into the system, the stage of the river approximately here at St. Louis could be anywhere from 3 to 5 foot higher than we're actually seeing right now. So the flood control system is doing all it possibly can at the moment.
What lesson have you learned from all this? I assume there's probably a bunch of lessons, but what do you think is the most important thing that the Army Corps has learned as a result of what you're dealing with?
Well, that's sort of hard to comment on right now, Mike. This is an ongoing situation. There'll be after-action reports, you know, when all this is finally over with. Everything that's being done so far is the most, what I want to say, possible protection being provided, and it'll all be looked at, and any recommendations, you know, will be made at a later date, you know, how to improve it in the future.
But as we take a look at some of the video from this unbelievable scenes, because it looks like, in terms of area, like a new Great Lake has been formed, have you spotted any one particular weak link in your overall scheme of things?
Well, Mike, if you remember back last week, the Vice President at the Flood Summit here in St. Louis showed a aerial photograph which showed another Great Lake. He called it the Sixth Great Lake. And all that water's eventually got to drain out past St. Louis. And when you get that much rain over such a big area, it's just impossible to control. You design for a certain event, and that event's been exceeded.
So what do you do when this is all over? I mean, have the levees been destroyed to the point where it's going to cost billions to rebuild them?
I don't know the exact total. That's not my area of expertise. They will be rebuilt, and to what extent, that'll be determined later. What level do you provide for? Do you provide for this event, which is going to be approximately a 100-year flood event as we talk at St. Louis, or do you build up to a 500-year event? That's something for the economists to figure out and to decide.
Very briefly, what's the mood there this morning? What are the people who have been doing this for so many days thinking at this point?
Well, Mike, you wake up every morning, and it's sort of like being in a nightmare, to be truthful. You get up and you watch the weather, and you see another 6, 7 inches of rain falling upstream, and you know that water's got to come by, so you just get up and you go in and do the job again.
Well, Jerry, we wish you good luck on this day and in the future days ahead, and hope that your work doesn't have to last that much longer.
Thank you.
Because it's been, as you say, an epic event. Jerry Rash.
The flood wall to give you an idea of what's going on. You can see how the floodwaters have started flowing underneath the concrete barrier, and that seepage must be stopped before it causes part of the flood wall to collapse.
If left to do its own thing, the whole wall could collapse, because what we are doing is we are This is a clay-founded or a dirt-founded wall. There is no support underneath it except the soil it sits on. So if that material would move out, the wall itself could tilt either backwards or forwards.
And inspection crews are monitoring the flood wall 24 hours a day for any weak spots.
Downriver at St. Genevieve, sandbaggers are trying to raise the height of their levee to 50 feet. Just 2 weeks ago, the city's goal was to have a 45-foot tall levee, but St. Genevieve officials want to have some extra protection for the expected crests next week.
And that's our 8.
Soaked, the levee has held since Tuesday, but officials are concerned that it can't take much more water.
Volunteers are still needed. The sandbagging effort will continue.
Thursday morning. Residents were safely evacuated, but much of yesterday was spent trying to round up the hundreds of head of livestock. There was a group of pigs found clinging to this barn roof. You can see they were rescued finally by a barge. It took less than 12 hours for the waters to swallow Kaskaskia Island. The people in Grafton, Illinois are letting the federal government know this morning they need help. Residents are putting together a videotape of the damage there, and they'll send the tape to President Clinton when the city applies for aid. Some say they don't think the pictures will work, but they're willing to take that chance. Tomorrow morning in St. Charles.
Like these near Omaha, parts of the state got 7 inches of rain on Thursday. Still others received as much as 10 inches. And just like here, there's no relief in sight. More rain is in the forecast for this weekend. And of course, time and time again,
American are under a boil order. The company is distributing water supplied by the Land of Sun Dairy in O'Fallon, Illinois. The National Guard is passing out the water at the Alton Square Shopping Center until further notice. The boil order is also in effect until further notice.
And you can help.
Time to start cleaning up. Officials tell me water from heavy rains in the Kansas City area is on the way. Tons of rock patch a leak in the levee that protects the city of St. Louis. The Mississippi burrowed a 60-foot hole under the concrete wall in North St. Louis late Thursday night, sending floodwaters gushing onto a parking lot. Work crews dumped rock to plug the hole and build a backup levee to the flood wall. That has solved the problem, at least for now.
The two most costly areas, fighting the flood itself, the bill is more than $258 million, and crop damage, estimated at $565 million. Governor Edgar says the state has to be ready to answer when needed.
2 days ago, I was listening to a farmer who said, I've never taken any kind of government assistance, I've never been on public aid, anything like that, but I just lost everything I had. And, you know, I don't feel bad, you know, taking some help now. And we need to make sure they get...
The state $53 million in jobless claims.
A bright spot in all this, the water is receding in Des Moines. Volunteers are stepping in to help flood victims clean up what the disaster left behind.
On about Wednesday, Thursday, Grafton will top out at 37.0. St. Louis and Chester next weekend and the beginning of the following week will be around 48 feet. So certainly it looks as though we could top out and go above and beyond the records we have already set for the flood of '93.
It goes from northeastern Kansas up into Omaha and into western Iowa and northwestern Missouri too. But this is all bad news because it's going to wash into the Missouri and work its way in our direction. There is a tornado watch in extreme northwestern Missouri till 2 o'clock in the morning. And for the northern tier of counties in Missouri...
Continuing to pound the levees each and every day up and down the Mississippi Valley. In Quincy, Illinois, water is crashing through a section of the second longest levee on the Mississippi, flooding over 30,000 acres of farmland. Already 100,000 acres have been lost, and many more could be. Another break today in Perryville, Missouri, where the Mississippi swept through this levee, flooding over 20,000 acres of land. Just upriver, more evacuations are underway. And in St. Joseph, Missouri, the latest flood wave has knocked out water service there to 77,000 people.
Well, I'm glad I'm getting water instead of being flooded.
In churches up and down the Mississippi today, people are praying for relief while bracing for the heavens to unleash more rain, creating a third wave of record floodwaters. All of that water now is heading downriver, making this a critical week for the soggy levees and the people who are racing again to stay ahead of the rising waters.
I think we're going to have to do a lot more bagging.
In areas like South St. Louis, volunteers are piling more sandbags on top of their already straining levees, preparing for at least another foot of floodwater.
Every time you think there's relief, you know, the next onslaught comes downriver. So we're besieged by it.
New forecasts call for the river to reach 48 feet in St. Louis, a foot higher than last week, breaking yet another record. But the people here for now are holding on to their spirit, praying too that the levees will hold, and still waiting for brighter and drier days. Today has been relatively kind, little or no rain in the area. It's very muggy and very steamy, but no rain, and that's important. But every time the people in these valleys get their hopes up, some other bad news floats down the river. John?
Bob, with the ground beneath...
The levees have been standing, they're very soggy. It's hard to detect underneath the water what's going on. If the bags underneath give way, then soon that can wash out, the tops can collapse. And I suspect that maybe, I say maybe, what happened today in Quincy.
Bob Orr on the flood watch in Alton, Illinois. Thanks. All along the Mississippi Valley, the tug of war between people fighting to save what's theirs and a river determined to reclaim what it once owned has been going on now for weeks. Each new crest, each new levee break is falling on people already driven to exhaustion. Terrence Smith reports on how one town is coping with stress. It's rising as quickly as the floodwaters.
We are gearing up for the worst flood in this city's history.
In Alton, Illinois today, Mayor Bob Taus and other residents of this small industrial city across the river from St. Louis were once again preparing to do battle with the Mississippi. People of Alton had thought the worst was behind them. But this weekend, they learned that heavy rains upstream will shortly bring more trouble.
New crest next week will be 41.5 feet, which will be a record flood here in Alton.
Half of the town's riverfront business district has been underwater for almost 3 weeks. Mayor Taus has been doing what he can to keep up the spirits of shop owners like Gene Childress, whose antique store is just a few feet from the rising river.
It's not even real. I can't believe it.
I know.
This is Chinese water torture. There's no doubt about it.
John Tripp is a psychologist who has been helping flood victims cope with the stress of a sustained crisis.
We're probably looking at an increase in probable suicide rates as people are not only bankrupt, they're destitute, they're real sad, and that's the kind of pain that never goes away.
Some representative troops at each one of those sites to support us.
Mayor Taus, a retired engineer who took office just 3 months ago, thinks the people of Alton are bearing up well.
I see people tired, but I don't see angry people. I don't see tempers flaring. I see tired people sometimes meeting a new challenge.
In at least one respect, the people of Alton are more fortunate than many of the Mississippi flood victims. Their homes are generally on high ground. They have running water and electricity. And so far, at least, no one has had to be evacuated. And as the flooding continues with no end in sight, they are getting on with their lives.
Dearly beloved,
Lisa Jameson and Darren Jones got married yesterday in a city park. At Memorial Hospital, Ms. Haley Freeman, at 6 pounds 7 ounces, became the newest resident of Alton. Terrence Smith, CBS News, Alton, Illinois.
Pumping water from the area first spotted the fire. Flames ripped through the Fraser Flora shop. The roof of the building collapsed, but no one was hurt. The cause of the fire is under investigation, but an electrical short due to flooding is suspected.
Another water plant is shut down because of rising water along the Missouri River. This time, St. Joseph, Missouri is without drinking water. Plus,
what are now lakes, and just to see the disaster and reflect in people's lives, it's very sad.
Once on the ground, the volunteers had 11 hours and wasted no time getting to work.
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to help you guys out. When I was in the plane, I saw the houses underwater, and I just couldn't imagine.
It's devastation like that we just can't comprehend, but I think it really pulls the human spirit together.
And it's not just Minnesotans. Volunteers have flown in from Canada, Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Georgia, and those who can't make it to St. Louis are sending semi-truckloads of supplies along with sentiments. Thinking of you from Virginia, praying for you in Dayton, Ohio, and good luck from the Chicago Police Department.
I was pretty surprised about all this stuff. I never knew where it came from.
Most never will, but to the hundreds of thousands who've given, that doesn't matter.
That helps somebody out. And if I can do that, then I guess my mission is accomplished.
In South St. Louis County, Jean Jackson, News Channel 5.
And after working at the Salvation Army Donation Center, many of those Minnesotans sandbagged along the river to Pear. Tonight, they'll fly back to Minneapolis, and Northwest hopes to bring another group of volunteers very shortly.
Well, our Floodwatch 93 coverage continues just ahead.
Coming up, meteorologist John Fuller shows us how summer thunderstorms upriver are adding to our water woes.
Randy, huge thunderstorms in Iowa last night. Heavy rains there contributing to our flooding problems. The details on the forecast are coming up. The atmospheric faucet, and we had thunderstorms upriver last night in portions of Iowa. Heavy thunderstorms dumping around 2 to 3 inches of rain. You can see the lightning in the background in that area, dumping the gusty winds along with it in excess of 83 miles per hour through portions of Des Moines. And the rainfall obviously is flowing into the Mississippi River and will take about a day and a half to 2 days to make it down into the St. Louis metro area. Not only heavy downpours, but dangerous lightning in the Des Moines area last night. Now, things are quiet there now, and they're quiet here for the time being. But look at, on August 2nd, we will see our crest of the Mississippi River at St. Louis at 48 feet now. That is almost a foot higher than the last crest, and that is certainly bad news. In Grafton, 37.5 feet, the expected crest on July 30th. Down in Chester, 48 feet on August 3rd. Now, there are concerns along the Missouri River, and the Missouri River will be seeing some cresting also. And in Gasconade, it will crest at 36 feet on the 31st of August. At St. Charles, even higher than last time, 38 feet on August 2nd. That's about a week away, a week and a day away. At the Merrimack River, that's going to fluctuate due to conditions from the Mississippi River because it's all backwash. On August 2nd, it will crest at 44.3 feet. Outside we go.
A new crest on the Mississippi endangers the Alton Water Treatment Plant and brings out more volunteers.
Breaks this portion of Perry County, one of the latest areas to go awash after a levee gives way.
Good evening. Approximately 200 people have been evacuated from their homes following an early morning levee break about 80 miles south of St. Louis in Perry County.
News 4's Herb Humphreys has returned from the scene. He has this report from our Flood of 93 Operations Center. Herb.
Evan, as that Mississippi River levee gave way about 2:30 a.m., it sent floodwaters surging over 26,000 acres of very fertile farmland. 26,000 acres, by the way, is approximately 40 square miles.
The collapsing levee took a Corps of Engineer employee and his pickup truck with it. 52-year-old Harold Smith escaped with cuts and bruises. As the levee virtually exploded, another Corps employee rushed toward Smith and found him.
We hugged each other, wrapped him up in a tarp, made my truck into an ambulance, and we headed for town. Let everybody know everybody was accounted for. It was dark, it was scary. The levee started blowing up 100 foot in front of my truck and my headlights, and it was real crazy. It's a miracle the man's, with us.
Smith remains hospitalized in Perryville. Immediately after the levee broke, lawmen began alerting people living in the area, and because of that early warning,
everyone got out all right. We're certain everyone got out. We do have several water patrol boats out going door to door, but we're certain we got everyone out.
Herb and Tommy Niels have lived in this river bottom all their lives. They and their families had to leave during the last flood in 1943, but they returned when the water subsided. This time,
I don't think we'll come back. The house is all going to be tore up, and it's not worth it.
During the flood of 43, waters came up just above the entrance door on what is now the Ernst Service and Machine Shop. But now they expect the waters to climb even higher.
We should have approximately 3 more feet of water than we had in 1943, which would put it midway of those upper windows.
Rick admits he's guesstimating, but sadly, officials on the scene say he's very, very close to right. In addition to all that valuable farmland, there are several communities in the bottoms, including McBride. That's where we did most of our taping today. And there are several major businesses. They include a popcorn and cereal processing plant, one of the biggest employers in Perry County, and also a Saberliner installation. Laurie?
Thank you. That's Herb Humphreys reporting from the Operations Center. Well, several workers are reported safe after this morning's break of the Sny Island levee in Pike County, Illinois. They had to be rescued by a National Guard helicopter. Floodwaters opened up a wide area of the levee, forcing hundreds of residents out of East Hannibal in the small town of Hull. Illinois 336 is also closed over a 6-mile stretch. Illinois Emergency Management Agency folks say the Sny Island break will put about 17,000 to 18,000 acres of land underwater. And there is fear tonight that the water supply for tens of thousands of local customers will be cut off.
Floodwaters continue to inch closer to a facility at the Illinois American Water Company in Alton, and customers there are doing everything they can to save the plant from drowning. News 4's Heidi Deja joins us now with more on this story. Heidi.
Well, Evan and Lori, it seems as though these days you hear a lot about big companies and customers being on opposite sides. Well, tonight in Alton, big business and the little guy are on the same side, waging a battle against the river.
Illinois American's Alton treatment plant was surrounded by water, and the supply could be cut off. Customers started flooding the facility to help sandbag, and they have good reason.
Because it's my city, it's my town. People came from Chicago, Springfield, Cincinnati, Ohio to take care of our town, and I feel we should be here.
This is what the plant looks like from the air, literally an island. Nearly 80,000 customers in the Alton district must already boil their water and pick up free drinking water. But that's a small price considering the alternative.
We've been in serious trouble, and we do need the volunteers and the dedicated employees that are giving 16 and 18-hour days to protect that plant for our customers.
Many of these volunteers have been working around the clock to protect more water from getting into the plant, taking only short breaks.
To help, I get out in water. I stay in Godfrey, but I get out in water, so just to help out.
To give you an idea of just how massive this operation is, well, company officials tell us about 1,000 volunteers help fill about 90,000 sandbags. Even the searing 96 degrees wasn't enough to stop these volunteers.
Today's been about the worst, I think, for me. It's just work a little bit and then stop and get something to drink and rest a little bit, keep going.
National Guardsmen, visitors from Chicago, Maryland, and even France stopped in to help. The company calls these volunteers lifesavers.
They did.
The company is still looking for volunteers to help shore up a levee around its plant. Volunteers are trying to raise it 1 foot higher than the anticipated crest. So far, the water's running again, but those, we want to point out, in the Alton district must boil their water until further notice. The boil order in the Granite City district has been lifted.
All right, thank you, Heidi Deja.
The Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Calm in a very, very frightening situation.
Gary is the sole survivor of 7 boys and counselors from the St. Joseph's home who were trapped this weekend in Cliff Cave Park.
The ill-fated outing began Friday morning. By the afternoon, flash flooding turned Cliff Cave Park into a watery grave for 2 counselors and 4 boys. According to police, this is how Gary Marr beat the odds. He told police he was in a narrow section of the cave when water began rapidly rising.
As the water rose, it pushed him, the current pushed him backwards, and he was finding pockets of air as he was being pushed by the current. He'd raise his head out of the water to the roof of the cave, take in some air, and then go back underwater.
Gary finally located an area where he could keep his whole head above water. While searchers frantically worked, he held on. In the pitch darkness, he felt the bodies of his friends float by. Finally, the water receded, but Gary continued to hold on to his safe perch.
He described it as a pocket to where he could hold on and keep his head above water. And then eventually the water went down, and he was there in this area and remained there.
He heard the voices of rescuers once, but they went away without finding him. When they returned, he called out, and this time they came for him.
I can't explain the feeling, to hear him, he was alive and well when we got to him. He was hypothermic, good spirits, a real trooper.
Trooper indeed. Now, Detective Fitch says Gary survived because he thought about the situation even as it was happening. And he says he stayed on his ledge even after the water went down because it was so dark in the cave, he had no idea of what was around him. And we understand within the hour he will be released from the hospital.
Another level in that we no longer realize that we've got a local problem.
Crisis often brings us together, but our sense of purpose must keep us together.
To safety by a helicopter. And south of here, more and more dry land falls victim to the flood. Thousands of acres are now underwater along the Mississippi River near Perryville, Missouri. 2 levee breaks yesterday inundated farmland south of St. Louis. One Army worker inspecting the levee was trapped in his truck when it broke. A co-worker managed to rescue him.
Well, also south of here in Prairie du Rocher, Illinois, it is not a question of if the levee will break, it is a matter of when.
So residents there are asked to evacuate. Others race the clock trying to close up a prospective second levee around the town. The 2 News team's Dennis Riggs reports.
This is the section of levee experts believe is about to break. A series of sand boils shows the Mississippi is tunneling under the dike, weakening the structure.
The berm, that's the stabilizing berm, the levee is beginning to cave off and fall in.
So at this point, is there anything you can do to save it?
There's nothing.
How much time do you think you have?
He said from 2 to 10 hours. And it's just, nobody knows.
Like their pioneer forefathers who built historic Fort de Chartres to stave off enemy attacks, townspeople are braving the scorching heat to build a secondary level to stave off the onslaught of the river. Now, they are trying to protect the folks who are building that levee back there by doing a couple of things. The first thing is they're building a protective sandbag levee right here. It's a small levee that will hopefully slow the water down, giving those workers time to get out. And everybody working out here on the sandbag and the main levee are required to wear life vests, just in case.
It's just too unpredictable. I mean, it can go at a moment's notice, and the Corps has recommended, and we've agreed as a county and town not to let anyone go out there and mess with it.
Just not worth endangering lives.
Exactly.
This new levee cuts a vital railroad artery, and trains are already starting to back up. 90 families living between the river and the levee have been evacuated, but the town of Prairie du Rocher is standing its ground.
Dennis Riggs, the 2 News team.
Because of first they're clobbered with tornadoes, then torrential rains hit, blowing out windows and crumbling grain silos. This midday, the town, 75 miles southwest of Omaha, is under 2 feet of water. So just remember.
It just seems to get worse. We need some good news from you, Mr. Glenn.
About the only good news by the end of the week. In the first
at the site, but in the last 10 minutes, they were ordered to move, presumably because of possible danger near that levee. We'll keep you posted, and we'll go live with a report via satellite if they can move and establish a signal during this broadcast.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
A series of levee breaks over the weekend chased more people from their homes. One of the longest levees on the Mississippi gave way yesterday south of Quincy, Illinois. Another 44,000 acres of farmland are underwater as a result. In Perry County, Missouri, a levee broke yesterday morning just as an Army Corps of Engineers employee was checking it for sand boils. His truck fell 15 feet into the breach. Luckily, he was not hurt. And in Monroe County, Illinois, another 600 people from Prairie du Rocher to Valmeyer are out of their homes because of the floods. Governor Carnahan is in Washington.
Which could mean the flooding of about 200 homes. The levee there is described by one resident as like walking on jello.
The United States isn't the only place hard hit by floods. The devastation caused by 5 weeks of flooding in southern Asia continues to rise. In Nepal, more than 1,600 people are either confirmed or presumed dead from the flooding. Hundreds are still missing. Rescuers used an elephant to get a Dutch couple to safety after they were trapped in a national park. In Bangladesh, almost half the country is underwater, and as many as 20 million people have felt the effects of the flooding. Our Floodwatch 93 coverage continues.
Deer standing around, grazing in this soybean field with nowhere else to go. Right here alone, I count about 40. But others aren't that lucky. Conservation agents and the Coast Guard are planning to fly food to stranded deer. And what about the little ones? That's where Susie Sutton comes in. Her Missouri Wildlife Rescue Center in Baldwin is turning into Fawn City.
They are nursing animals. They have been without food for days and days and days, separated from the dams.
This little one was recently born during the flood. And what about the other wild animals?
I think most of the small animals are not making it. The possums, the raccoons, the whole baseline of the entire ecosystem.
And in the weeks ahead, she worries about all the chemical runoff, raw sewage, and oil spills in the river. Migration season is coming up.
And that will cause a very serious problem for ducks and geese.
It's a natural disaster that will continue to burden both man...
Sewage plant there. They want to make sure that the water coming out of the plant does not undermine a levee in the area and possibly cause a breach.
At St. Joseph in northwest Missouri, National Guard trucks are supplying residents with bottled water. The troops stepped in after Missouri River floodwater seeped from the ground and caused officials to close the water plant. Residents are lining up at water stations with buckets and trash cans to get water. The city is expected to be without water for several more days.
St. Louis County officials are looking into what should be done to protect people who visit Area K.
A straight line, but somehow dirt is being moved under the surface. You can see it behind me. It's quite a sight. It's so much moved so much that a large dip has been created. A likely suspect is a Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District sewage pumping station, which sits on the banks of the federal levee. Now, officials are concerned the erosion could lead to a levee breach. That could flood several acres of an industrial area, including several factories and a manufacturing facility, or several manufacturing facilities. MSD is bringing in a crew to install a lining in the sewer pipe to stop any leaks.
The only thing we can figure where the soil is going, movement, to prevent any damage to the levee. The Corps is monitoring the levee. There hasn't been any movement yet on the levee, but we want to make sure we don't get any.
An unrelated
creek gravel around the base of some of the bridges. They continue to watch that. Now you see the situation that he was talking about near the McKinley Bridge, and the real concern then was if those kind of levees, federal built and bridge supports are being threatened a little bit. Now we have to start worrying about some of these sandbag levees. We do have some good news out of the Des Peres area for today anyway, the River Des Peres area, because volunteering a 48-foot crest next Tuesday. The sandbag, rock, and gravel levee appears to be holding, but it is under 24-hour watch just in case, although it's hard to get all the way around that levee to check it anymore, we're told. In the same area, they're also inspecting buildings that are above the 48-foot flood level to see if utilities can possibly be restored. One area of concern remains the Park Carondelet apartments. MSD crews are working to stop water from coming up through the sewer system. Most of that facility has been evacuated. Now in Prairie du Rocher, Illinois, another crisis building. And here they're trying to work. It's something they haven't tried before. Eric Thomas standing by to bring us up to date on that situation. Eric?
And in effect, Larry, they're going to try to use a flood to stop a flood, but I'll explain more about that in a minute. Sand boil is the term you've been hearing here a lot lately. It means that a levee is weakening from the bottom up, and that's just what's happening on the main levee on the Mississippi about 2 miles north of here. That is why in the past day or so, townsfolk have been working on a secondary levee. You see it there just behind me. It's also why they've mounted a major plugging operation and why townsfolk here are ready to go on a moment's notice.
All of this is compounded by more bad news on River Forecast.
And you've heard this before. The Mississippi crest date has now been pushed back again. Chief Meteorologist Bob Richards is in the Doppler 5 Weather Center. Bob?
Well, it's been rather a great progression of events. Great, of course, in quotes over the past 3 days. When we last convened on Friday, I reported the crest in St. Louis as being forecast this Wednesday. On Saturday, it was pushed back to Saturday or Sunday. Now, it's pushed back to Tuesday. The reason very simple. It's been very dry here, but upriver, it's been very, very wet over the past week. All that water eventually has to move back down into the St. Louis area. Today's stage along the Mississippi in St. Louis showing us
residents in St. Joseph and up and down the Mississippi.
Capacity, but Alton residents are still under orders to boil what comes out of the tap because river water is seeping in around the levee. And over the weekend, volunteers raised the height of the levee in preparation for the new crest.
It's gone from a levee to a dam to a fortress. At some points, the levee is 35 feet wide at the base. We built it up to accommodate a 43-foot crest. We've really reinforced it to the point where we're very confident that it will hold.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll take that one. This is the nice day. Alton officials have given away water to residents free of charge. These people say it's a hassle, but most are counting their blessings.
I'm glad not to be flooded out, so I'll come get the water, no problem.
Luck ran out at the water treatment plant in St. Joseph, Missouri over the weekend. People there may not have running water until the middle of the week.
But we're expecting it to cover the gauge you're watching, going up to 48 feet by Tuesday. Stay with us for more coverage of the Great Flood of '93.
During the mid-afternoon hours, and it includes the immediate St. Louis metro area, a good portion of our viewing area, just the west-central portions of Illinois, but the rest of the central and eastern portions of Illinois are exempt from this watch. It does include the St. Louis metro area. Severe thunderstorms are possible. We'll have it for you graphically in a moment. I want to show you the allergy numbers 4 to 9. Heat index this afternoon about 100 degrees, so take it easy if you have to be out of doors at all. High temperature today is our current reading of 91. We had a low this morning that dropped down to 79 degrees. I want to show you, first of all, the temperature pattern around the two-state region. There is a front to the northwest of us, and that separates slightly cooler air, slightly drier air out over the western plains from a very hot and humid air mass that's overhead. We have temperatures generally in the 90s. There is a heavy downpours. Thankfully, the heaviest of the rainfall, the most severe weather, should stay just north of St. Louis, I think. At this point, that's how it looks. However, all the heavy rain will be and is upriver, right along the Mississippi River Valley, westward along the Missouri. It looks like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. As we've been reporting all weekend, there is a slight change in the pattern expected by midweek, a 4-day break, and then we'll see what
These volunteers struggling to save a grade school in the flood path have already lost their homes. They are battling a deadline of midnight when the school's flood insurance kicks in.
Basically, if we lose our school, we'll probably lose pretty much the whole town.
Up and down the length of Missouri, there are more than 120 levees protecting towns, homes, and farmland from the swollen Mississippi River. Already, almost half of those levees have broken, and many more are leaking and weakening.
Just south of St. Louis, a levee near Chester, Illinois, which was expected to hold back the river, didn't. It broke and flooded the surrounding areas so quickly, farmers had to leave their animals behind. All along the levees, people are learning a hard lesson.
I lived here 46 years. It's kind of hard to think, you know, something you've cared for is going to be gone. But, well, I guess that's life.
While thousands of Midwesterners continued to watch the levees, Mother Nature showed them her fury doesn't end with floods. In the already soaked town of DeWitt, Nebraska, tornadoes touched down over the weekend, and more severe weather is waiting on the horizon. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Alton, Illinois.
The NBC News, Prairie du Rocher, Illinois.
Send us a check, KMOV TV. Be sure to write neighbor to neighbor flood video on the envelope. You'll need to send a $7 check or money order. $5 for the video, $2 to cover shipping and handling costs. Every penny of your $5 donation for the video will go to the American Red Cross because the cost of the tapes was underwritten by Grandpa's. Please allow 4 to 6 weeks, however, for delivery.
One easy way to make a contribution to flood victims is while you do your groceries.
Not seen a drop of water ever. But now he's got about 2 feet of it, so here's what we're going to do. This is your basic home video camera in an airtight cabinet. This is how we're going to get a flood level look at the destruction in Jim's place.
It's fitting that as we slosh towards Jim's shop, it's raining. On this day, there was just a 10% chance for rain, and West Alton got it. At water level, as we look out from the inside of the store, the flood is seen for what it really is, suffocating, unforgiving, and dirty. Remnants of a once active business float by like ghosts, potato chip bags, soda bottles, and the local newspaper. It stinks in here. The water is filthy. You could only imagine the scum it'll leave behind. It's refreshing to see something alive in here, in this case, a toad that no longer knows a natural habitat. Outside, sandbags still sit in front of the door underwater, defeated like everything else around here. When the flood first hit West Alton, this was the only dry place around. The shop was hopping. Now the cars parked here by refugees sit like sunken ships. The gas pumps that fueled so many evacuations are now paralyzed. And the homes of Jim's regular customers are underwater. After being at flood level for a while, the water seems overwhelming. You want to come up for air. You want to get out. Now you know how Jim and the rest of West Alton feel.
When the water recedes, it's going to be a monumental job. And gentlemen, we're a little disappointed with the quality of the pictures. I mean, but of course, this is the Mississippi, not the Cayman Islands. So we did get a chance to show you how surrounded these people are by water and absolute filth. And we'd like to thank West End Diving for use of that camera.
Okay. Well, the river's carrying a lot of soil now, too.
Yes, it
More
is.
than it normally would. All the rivers are.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, divers tell you it's always been dirty. You can't really see much ahead there.
There's a
But
lot
by
more
getting
now.
that ground level look, you really feel that the claustrophobia that everybody's now beginning to feel, this feeling that you're just drowning.
All right, Jeremy, thank you very much for that perspective. And